admitting to a hidden and neglected area in my growing space. This week, I'm going to be bringing this back into action. Being completely honest, most of us who've had growing spaces for a number of years will have an area that we have neglected or has basically become a bit of a dumping ground. And for me, it's this little old shed down at the end of my plot. Now, this is basically my pot shed rather than my potting shed because I know it's filled with pots. However, I'm saying that, I don't think I've actually been inside it for about 3 years. So this is going to be interesting. Now, once I'm inside it, I am actually going to be turning this into something completely different. Now, it sort of looks a bit like a dunny, as they might say down under. I'm not turning it into a toilet. We're really lucky down here that we have our own facilities. But I am going to be turning this into a mushroom shack. So I'm going to see if I can open it. And then I'm going to have a look inside to see exactly what I've got. Well, it's certainly not taken me very long to empty this little shed. However, it was full to the rafters and I have an awful lot of equipment which I've not used for 2 to 3 years. So clearly I just don't need it. Now, what I love about this shed is it was handmade by a friend of mine about 10 years ago. And it is in a really perfect sheltered little position and it has these shelves. Now, these shelves are going to be perfect for growing my mushrooms on as well as sort of hanging them from the ceiling. However, there is a little bit of repair that is needed on this shed to make it fully mushroom ready. So that's what I need to get on with next. So now that the shack is actually quite secure, it's time to get on with the fun stuff. Now, what I have are 3 different kits. Some of them will be actually inside the shack and one of them will be outside. Now, the kits that I have been specifically compiled as an outdoor project for schools or community groups. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how much it actually takes to get these done and potentially how many people will be able to work on this project as well, which is really important. So next thing to do is the exciting stuff, and it's time to get those spores indoctrinated to get our mushrooms on the grow. So what I'm going to start off with is actually my button mushrooms. So here they are all ready to go, and what I need to do is in a container is put some of my beautiful peat-free compost in here and then mix this in. Now, I'm going a little bit sort of sideways with this because it should be a container without holes, but I'm going for this one because I quite like the idea of the button mushrooms growing through the sides. Now, ideally, these need to be for the first 21 days after inoculation in complete darkness. So in the shack, I have already put up some blinds, if you like, on the windows so that I have that darkness. Now, it also means that I'm going to put some newspaper around the sides of this where those holes are, otherwise more light is going to get in. What I do need to make sure is that there is some good air circulation, which is why I'm not going to put this in complete darkness, say in a dark bag of some sort, because I do want that airflow. So I'm just going to pop this in here, and the next thing I need to do is actually measure out of 4 kilograms of compost, just 3, so a third, which is going to go in the bottom of this container. And actually this is a perfect size because once I've done that, I'm then going to mix in all my beautiful mushrooms and then top it up with some more compost. Now, the last thing I need to do on this particular container is another piece of newspaper. Again, it needs to be wet down. I'll do that afterwards. I'm just going to not compact it, so I just put it around the top. Next thing I need to do is pop this into the mushroom shack for 21 days, and they should actually be ready for the next thing. The next thing will be to put some coir on the top for them to keep on growing. In the meantime, I'm going to get on with another project, which actually means I have to do a bit of prep. So I'm going to get on with that one next. Now, realistically, the button mushrooms probably could be divided up and really split between 4 different people. Now, what I have here are my great oyster mushrooms, and these are quite different, particularly because of the growing medium. Now, what you need for this is 2 kilograms of straw. Now, you can't just use straw straight from the packet. I have had to really sterilize mine by either you can put them in buckets with hot water or boil them up. It also means that the straw becomes hydrated. So I have 2 big bags here full of straw, and all I'm going to do, because I've got 2 bags and they're basically about the same size, is I'm going to, again, clean hands, open up this mushroom spore packet, and I'm going to split them between the 2 of these. Now what will happen is, as I put them in, I will need to mulch them through the straw. Oh, it's quite slimy. And once I've done that, I'm going to go into a big paper bag. So about half of these spores into one. And I'm just going to break them up in these bags. You can do this in buckets before they go into that big potato sack. So just transferring all this lovely straw with the beautiful mushroom spores in as well into this big paper bag. Now it might be that this isn't necessarily big enough, so it could be a case of getting another one and having 2 bags on the go. But again, definitely something which about 4 people, maybe even 6, could be doing themselves. So now that this bag is full to brimming, I'm going to just seal the top of this, and it's going to go straight into the mushroom shack as it is. And again, 21 days for all those spores to actually indoctrinate themselves in the straw. And then I'm just going to slit open the bag at various intervals, spray it, keep it moist, and I should have some mushrooms. So the last thing to do, and it's going to be tomorrow because the light is failing me, is going to be indoctrinating some of my logs with some beautiful mushroom spores. So the final part on this community package is the dowels, and what I need for that is some really freshly cut, about 7 to 8 weeks ago, hardwood. And I have 3 different varieties of dowels which are going to go in these, so I need 3 different logs. Now ideally your logs need to be around 50 centimetres in length and between 10 to 20 centimetres in diameter. What I'm going to do next is making sure that the bark stays on, is just space out where my dowels are going to go and drill in using an 8mm bit and going in about 35mm. So the holes have actually been cut into each of my 3 logs, and all I'm going to do now is, again, clean hands. All I need to do is actually hammer these into the dowels that I have created, bash it into place. And what you need to do is actually make sure that it is flush with the log itself, because the next stage is going to be to cover them up. So considering this was what I thought was going to be the hardest part, I've got all my dowels already knocked in and flush onto the log itself. And now using some beeswax, just had to melt this in a little bain-marie kind of setup over here. And I need to, with this little dibber, just paint over where those dowels have actually gone in. Now this is just to seal them into place. And what you also need to think about is if there is any damage to the log and you have any extra sort of holes, you also need to cover those up. You don't need to cover the ends, just those little bits in there as well. Now again, if you're thinking about doing this with community groups, I'd probably say this would be ideal sort of for 2 people per log, so that's 6 people who can actually be doing this little job. And then once it's all sealed, they will just need to go into place. Now we're not going to be looking at instant gratification with these. These might take about 18 months once they are in situ to actually come good. They can go out in the ground just next to my mushroom shack, or they can actually go inside. Lots and lots of mushrooms I am predicting in my future. So get your mushrooms on, get yourself a mushroom shack, and definitely if you're working with children or community groups, this is actually a really nice little project.